After what happened in Waco, the group we have not heard from is the actual bikers. I was told last week that the Confederation of Clubs would like to offer their perspective on what happened, and I thought that sounds like a capital idea. David Devereaux is with the Confederation of Clubs. David, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about what happened in Waco that we don't know.
That we don't know?
Yes.
Well, I think that probably a proper place to start is what we do know. A lot of what we don't know has not been revealed yet, but what we do know is 170-plus individuals were incarcerated and charged and being held on $1 million bail simply for attending a political gathering. You know, freedom of association is an American right. It's not a privilege. And we don't sacrifice innocent freedoms of individuals for prosecutorial efficiency. What it seems that they've done is locked every individual up who had an eyewitness account, or the majority of individuals that had an eyewitness account of exactly what happened that day. The baseline is it's absurd to suggest that 174-plus individuals are guilty of a crime. Now, I think it's fair to say that we don't have enough of the details about this incident to draw firm and solidified conclusions. Enough hasn't been released yet, but we do know that. It's a violation of due process for that many people to be arrested for an event that obviously they were not involved in.
David, let's talk about exactly what happened that day. First of all, this was a gathering of whom?
Well, this was a gathering of the Confederation of Clubs and Independents. The Confederation of Clubs is a loosely fit political organization among motorcycle clubs that exists nationwide. There are a Confederation of Clubs in virtually every state, and they've been meeting for 20-plus years without incident and without any examples of violence happening at these meetings. This is the first one in history that I'm knowledgeable about, and I've been involved in it for 10 years myself, where any incident has ever happened. And what happens at these gatherings is independents and motorcyclists from motorcycle clubs gather, and they discuss legislation, like at this particular meeting, legislation that's currently in the Texas legislature, and different issues that affect motorcyclists nationwide, helmet bills, safety issues, and different pieces of legislation and political issues like that. That's solely what these meetings are confined to. And so the idea that the whole purpose for this gathering was for motorcycle clubs to meet and discuss issues with one another that have nothing to do with politics is simply not true. That's not what Confederation of Club meetings are about. In fact, at Confederation of Club meetings, there is no discussion between clubs about the types of issues that are being discussed in the news media. We don't discuss issues between clubs that maybe would affect or have a personal problem between clubs. Those aren't discussed at Confederation meetings at all. They're purely political in nature and purely to responsibly participate in the democratic process.
It has been reported, David Devereaux with the Confederation of Clubs, it has been reported that the reason for the meeting was to settle disputes over recruitment because that was causing problems between the clubs.
Now, in terms of what specific motorcycle clubs have discussed with each other outside the confines of the Confederation of Clubs, I can't speak to. But the one thing that I can speak to is that particular Confederation of Clubs and Independence meeting, that was not the purpose of that meeting. The meeting was to gather and discuss legislation and political issues that are currently affecting the motorcycle community. I think one of the best examples is one of the individuals that's currently incarcerated. He's one of the leading motorcycle rights advocates, not only in Texas, but also in America. His name is Thomas Paul Landers. He simply is incarcerated because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and because they're indicting his ability to express his freedom of association to an organization that he's been belonging to for a long time. This man is a father. This man is a husband. He's a responsible individual in the community, employed, and spends a lot of his free time fighting for other people's civil liberties. And this man is locked up simply because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was there to speak about all the work that he's done in the Texas legislature and work with other legislatures this session around the country. I mean, that's simply what the meeting was about, and it's being mischaracterized, in my opinion, based on what I know about Confederation of Clubs. I've been the chair of the Confederation of Clubs in Washington State and also have heavily worked with Confederation of Clubs throughout the country. I've traveled throughout the country. And in fact, I was at that same Texas Confederation of Clubs meeting in January, 2 meetings before this one occurred. They occur every month and a half. I was actually at this meeting a couple of months ago, and it was a completely peaceful gathering. It actually took place in Austin when I attended, and there were a lot of people there, clubs, from all over Texas, and there was absolutely zero incident. So
David Devereaux is our guest. He's with the Confederation of Clubs. Who were the clubs represented at that meeting?
The meeting that I was at?
No, the meeting in Waco.
The meeting in Waco, well, it's a general, pretty much across the board. There are clubs that from the Christian organizations. There are clubs there are military veteran organizations. There are charity organizations. So there was a complete mismatch of different types of clubs that are involved in the Confederation of Clubs. There's no discrimination in terms of, what types of clubs you could be in to be politically involved. The whole idea is we have a lot more in common as motorcyclists than we have differences. And in terms of the political and rights agenda that we all have that in common. So we all gather and discuss that mutually. So,
David, I got about 45 seconds in this segment. Let me just ask you a quick question, and then we'll go to it in the next segment. How do members know, or how do people know? Is this open to any biker? Those meetings?
The Texas Confederation of Clubs and Independents, COC&I, is open to any motorcyclist who is interested in participating in political rights. They're absolutely open meetings. In fact, most of the meetings occur outside on an open mic, so anybody in public could hear them. The one that I attended was completely open. It occurred in front of the restaurant outside in the parking lot and over an open mic. I mean, there was absolutely nothing to hide because it's a political meeting.
All right, hold with us if you would. David Devereaux is with the Confederation of Clubs. We'll talk about who was at that meeting in Waco, what they suspect went wrong, and the law enforcement response. I mean, it is rather surprising how high the bail is for people who, in some of these cases, well, we'll talk about it coming up.
The point of view that I hold.